Good afternoon, everyone. So excited to have all of you join us this fine day. And it wasn't hard to leave the Broncos to come here, but hopefully there's some of us rooting for other teams or something. So let me just start us off with a word of prayer, and then we'll get started with our agenda. Heavenly Father, we come to you this afternoon seeking your guidance and blessing. We come in gratitude that you've called us to yourself and brought us together to follow you as part of Longmont Calvary. We offer ourselves to you, and we want all that we do to be characterized by love. We pray that all that we do will be pleasing to you. We pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. All right, I call this meeting to order. And I was counting noses as you were still coming in and got to 50, and many of you have joined us since that point. So our quorum requirement is 41, so we've surpassed that. And since we have a quorum, let's begin by reading the minutes of the prior meeting. So acting church clerk, or interim church clerk, whatever her title was, Mary Ann Harvey provided me with these. She's on the European continent as we speak, so I will read them in her stead. So this is the minutes of the Calvary Church quarterly business meeting from June 4th, 2023. The meeting was opened with prayer by Brad Harvey. The minutes of the March 12th, 2023 minutes were read and approved. Brad Harvey, chairman of the Elder Council, went over the nominations for positions in the new year. They included, for Council of Elders, Dave Daniels and Jim Chrysler, Benevolence Fund, Rob Mount as the team leader, Global and Local Partners, Marissa Ballard, for the financial team, Tracy Carson and Todd O'Donnell. Next, Garrett Nates, our lead pastor, gave his report. He talked about vision and values and flooding the world with the presence of Jesus. Regarding vision, this building should be an accepting place where ministry happens. And for values, he listed elevating Christ, equipping Christians to follow Christ, embracing our city, engaging with culture in conversations about things happening around us. Two major actions we want to take are multiply followers of Jesus Christ with an outward-looking posture and church planting. Some staffing updates were shared. Terry Sellers is now the outreach pastor, which is a part-time position that has already been put in the budget. He will help us find ways to embrace our city with Christ's love. He will also give guidance and direction to the Global Partners team. Open positions include the worship pastor, which Slingshot was working on, director of ministry operations, finances and facilities overseer. A part-time position maintains the building. TruePath Solutions is a group of experts who help churches produce master site plans and safety and serviceability of our site. So far, they've done face-to-face meetings, video calls, surveys, and engaged with Pastor Nates. There are some big problems with children's rooms flooding and building being difficult to navigate, especially for new people. They also heard discussions on the north property. They will give us a narrative of what they see as tangible next steps. The congregation was encouraged to ask questions. Leadership wants to be open and transparent. Tracy Carson gave a financial report for January through May 2023. David Finnegan will work with Tracy to figure out what information should be included in regular reports to the congregation about finances. A motion to accept the treasurer's report was passed. An elder's report was given by Brad Harvey. Results of the vote for 2023 to 2024 positions were 97% approved for all positions. Next, Brad talked about three main functions of the Elder Council. These are to direct, protect, and enable ministries of the church. A question came up about a church directory. Evan Fatal will be coordinating this project. The meeting was adjourned. Respectfully submitted, Mary Ann Harvey, acting church clerk. Are there any corrections to the minutes? All right, the minutes have been read. And if there are no corrections, the minutes stand approved. All right, so we'll move through our agenda. The next thing we have is for the lead pastor to share his report. So Garrett, come and share what's on your heart.
Thank you, Paul. Sorry, when my voice is a little gurgly after this morning, so lots of talking. So I won't talk too long because you've already heard me talk too much today, probably. Just a couple quick things. Personal family update. Many of you have asked about my kiddos, my family, how we're doing, and so grateful for your interest in my family. It's beautiful. Our two oldest are off at college. Our oldest, Ezekiel, is down at Grand Canyon University out in Phoenix, and this is his sophomore year down there, and he's loving it. I mean, except for it's 115 degrees, you know. Besides that, you know, what's not to love about being away from mom and dad in Arizona, right? And so he's enjoying time there. Our second son, Landon, is out at Cedarville University, just outside of Dayton, just a little bit. We asked him why he wanted to go back to Ohio. And he said, it was those Ohioans here, there was just a friendly inside joke. It's okay. Yeah. But there you go. You were wearing it, Dave. It's perfect. It's good. He's loving it, and we are so excited for him. Cedarville's a great school, and we're really grateful for the young men in his life who are helping him navigate what it looks like to live outside of the home, outside of mom and dad. So we're really excited for them. Our two youngest are in high school over at Skyline. Moriah is a junior, and our son Breck is a freshman over at Skyline. And they love it. It's so fun. So thank you for being interested in our kids' lives. It means a lot to us. We're part of this family with all of you that is an unruly family called Longmont Calvary. And we love it. Some of you know we've passed our 1 year mark here, which is so exciting. Praise God for that. And what a joy. It has been a wonderful year for Naomi and I. And our hearts are connected to you. We love you very much, and we know you are loving us as well. So thank you for all that you've encouraged us this past year. As I was sharing this morning, that many of you have written me letters of encouragement, notes, text, and I just want to encourage all of you to do that for one another, to encourage you to stay the course, keep at it, and so that's just a way that we can encourage one another. So a little bit of a personal update. Second, church contact update. Some of you remember that when I was candidating here, I talked about wanting to connect with all of you individually, if possible, or how we're going to do that. And I want to let you know we're making progress on that. It's not as fast as we would want to, because there's a lot of you, and there's only two of us. But when we stepped into that, we realized we really didn't have an awesome way to know who is at Longmont Calvary. Like, who are the people who are actually here? Some of that's a fallout of COVID, people leaving churches and bouncing around, whatever. But some of it is also internal things too, of making sure we clean up how we do things on the staff side, so I can actually access who you are and where you live, and all these things. And so it's still our desire to make personal connections with you. And I just want to encourage you that if you have not had a contact from me yet and you want that, can you please reach out to me? Send me an email, send me a text. Just so you know, my phone number is in the signature of all of my emails. So right at the bottom of there is my text number. You have direct access to me. So if you feel like, hey, I'd like to get together with you, please reach out. We'll continue to make progress on that. But if you're like, hey, you know, I'm here, help, let me know and we'll get together. Sound good? Deal? That's family business, right? That's just family life. A couple different things, just more church, like broader ministry-wise. Paul just mentioned some staffing updates that were happening. I'm so excited for Todd Warren to be here. That is a huge step in the right direction for us as a church. Is Todd here? I don't think Todd's here. Hey, there he is. We're so grateful for you, Todd, to be here. And so thank you for being willing to move from Nashville back to Colorado. So it's great to have you here, brother. So excited for what the future holds. Just a couple of quick staffing updates. As you may or may not know, I think you do know, Jeff Shepard has stepped down. Will be stepping down from his position as our student ministries director. And so that'll be effective somewhere around Thanksgiving, around that time. Jeff and Allison have served here as a volunteer basis on staff for a number of years, and we love them dearly and will be missed greatly in the years ahead. So Jeff, we just want to honor you. Jeff's in the back over here. And so we'll spend more time in the future giving a chance to publicly honor him, but I just wanted to acknowledge his transition coming up here soon. There's other positions that are on the docket that Paul already mentioned, so I'm not going to reiterate those things, but we have some open positions, and those are important positions. And so in the meantime, we're filling a lot of those roles through volunteers and different ways that we're getting after certain things. And so just be praying for those open positions, and we'll get those things filled on God's timing. It's a calling, ultimately. And so that's what we want to focus on, is getting the right people here. So it's good. Last thing is really related to where we are at as a church. We had our Vision Summit a couple weeks ago, and so this is really an exciting moment for our church. My father-in-law years ago wrote a book called The Yes Effect. The Yes Effect, Y-E-S. And in the book, he's just talking about when we say yes to what God is doing, what the effect is for us. And I just want to encourage us as a church, no matter what God's calling us to do, that we say yes to what he wants for us, and we act in faith in those things. The effect of saying yes can dramatically change direction of our personal lives, but also us as a church. And so just as we move forward into the future, just that we'd have that posture of saying yes to what he wants for us, and grateful for what he's given to us to act in faith in. And so today we have an opportunity to do some of that, but this is just one time. We have lots of these opportunities as a church going forward. And so just to encourage all of us as we continue to walk with the Lord, that we would be sensitive to how he's leading us, and be willing to be slightly comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's all I want to say, Paul. So who's next? I think it's Rob. Rob, come on up here. Rob's going to come up as the Deacons Fund guy for our deacons. And I'm not going to steal with his thunder because he wants to say some stuff. But when we think about embracing our city with the love of Jesus Christ, what we do with our Deacons Fund is an extraordinary opportunity for us to do things for people, to pay their light bills, to keep them in their homes, pay their medical bills. And so this is, as we talk about, what we're thinking about today with the North property, that's just one way. We are already doing a lot of different ways. And the Deacons Fund is an incredible opportunity we have to embrace our city with the love of Christ very tangibly. So, Rob, it's all you.
Thank you, Garrett, and I appreciate that. So I thought it might help with some newer people around Longmont Calvary just to share a little bit about what is the Deacons Fund, our benevolence fund. And the Longmont Calvary Deacons Fund exists to show the love of Christ to Longmont Calvary congregants and to the greater St. Vrain community through emergency financial gifts. And the Deacons Fund is a key contributor to our overall church mission of elevating Christ and embracing our community. And I did just want to stop and just say a quick thank you to Garrett for this, because we hear, I think, week in and week out, how we want to reach the Longmont community. And Garrett, ever since you've been here, that's truly been on your heart. And it's on my heart. I know it's on Roe's heart that I serve with on the Deacons Fund committee. But thank you for having a heart for that and for Longmont. So yeah. So our team, the Deacons Fund team members will be appointed according to the Longmont Calvary bylaws. The Deacons Fund team will consist of at least 2 and preferably 4 or more members. And the Deacons Fund also helps members, Longmont Calvary members and the community to see our counselors in the counseling center. So, we all know that we try and help with rent and utility bills and medical bills, but if someone needs counseling, the Deacons Fund is there to help with that as well. So just please know that for all of us, and or if you have friends of family, that sort of thing, the Deacons Fund can help with that. The Deacons Fund elevates Christ by demonstrating and embodying his generosity and pointing people to him as Lord and Savior. And then there's many stories that I can share about the folks that Roe and I work with every week. But I will say, probably 60+% of the calls that we get are from single moms with kids at home, no husbands, no partners, and literally they're a car breakdown, medical bill away from not being able to pay the rent and not put food on the table and things like that. So, it touches our heart to be able to help these ladies and just know that the money that you're giving is doing such an amazing job to help these families, because literally they don't know what they're going to do. They don't have family in the area. They don't have anybody to reach out to, and generally we ask, how did you find out about Longmont Calvary? And it's either, well, you helped my friend, or you helped my family, or I went online and there you were, people that will help. So we're out there. We want to be able to help them, but just know there's so many people that your dollars are going to help in this way. And Bread Basket is also fulfilling a great need for our Deacons Fund family, because a lot of times when we're talking with these folks, it's like, I don't know where we're going to have, put food on the table. And so we also, share about Bread Basket and being able to have them come through there. Who else do we affiliate with? So, besides what we do, we work with the Hour Center, we work with the St. Vrain School District, the In Between, and then just recently, in the past couple of weeks, I did a help along with Grace Church. They have a benevolence fund, and we kind of paired up together to help a young man really in need. So those are just some other areas, other people in the community that are already helping, but that we help with also. So far this year, we have helped 147 folks through the Deacons Fund. And that's down just a little bit. We were at 165 this same time last year. This year, we have helped with $70,612. So that's all from us and from you giving to that fund. And the in-person giving, I do want to say a huge thank you, because since we've restarted the once a month passing of the baskets and stuff again, the Deacons Fund balance has remained at a much healthier balance than it was the prior year and a half. So thank you for that. That's been a huge help, and that fund has been in good shape. How is the Deacons Fund funded? It is completely from the offerings from us, from the congregants. So there's nothing that comes out of your general giving or into the church is cut out for the Deacons Fund. It is all what's given separately when we take those offerings and when you give online and in the ways you do. So thank you. And then to wrap up, I would just like to say Ro and I could use some help. We've handled almost 150 helps so far this year. And so I would just like to ask that if there are those of you that might want to join our team, we'd love to have a couple other people with us. If you would pray about it, if you'd like to reach out to me, I'll just kind of explain, what we do, what's involved, but we would love to have a couple more people just to kind of share the load a little bit. And that's all I have, unless there are some questions. Wonderful.
Thank you, Rob and Ro, for faithfully leading that ministry for us, and I will echo their request that you consider joining the team. I know they would appreciate it. We recently had 4 on the team, and going down to 2 has put a big load on those 2 gentlemen, so consider that. All right, the next item of business on our agenda is to consider a couple of recommendations from the Council of Elders, 2 motions, and we'll go through both motions, have discussion on both before we vote, because we're trying to use a single paper ballot that includes decisions for both of those motions. And when we do the online voting, we will we intended to have a poll set up that same way, but apparently WebEx has changed their application, and we're going to have to do the voting online slightly differently through the chat function. But if you have questions as we go through this discussion time for these two motions and you're joining us online, we have someone monitoring the chat. Gabe, I think, is taking care of that. So just pop your questions in there. You can either direct it to Calvary Church or Longmont Calvary or whatever the account is that's leading the meeting on the WebEx, or you can just put it out there for all to see. But Gabe will speak up when we have comments or questions that come in that way. So the first of the two motions is a recommendation from the Council of Elders to affirm Ryan Hodgen as an elder to serve a 3-year term ending in 2026. And since this motion comes from a committee, it doesn't need a second. As we start discussion on the motion, I just want to relate that Ryan's been an active member of Longmont Calvary since 2002. I got that from this handy bio that you can pick up at the Welcome Center if you didn't yet see it. You can get a full color glossy of Ryan and his lovely family. So he's been here, a part of us for decades, and he served in many different ways. I'm sure many of you know those ways, but currently he's involved by leading a small group and by teaching in the, I think weekly in the children's ministry. And he's very familiar with many of the details of the church's recent financial management, and he's going to really have a helpful perspective on the council. So that's why we're recommending that he be joined. Is there any other discussion about that motion? Well, hearing none, normally we would vote, but we're going to hold that vote until we've discussed the other item. So just remember that motion. All right. The next motion is a recommendation from the elders that you affirm the sale of the north property to Habitat Humanity for $1.47 million. And again, since this motion comes from the elders, there isn't a requirement for a second. And so as we begin the discussion time, I would like to ask Dave Finnegan to just remind us what the proposal is, make sure it's clear in our mind before we have the rest of the discussion and vote.
So you'll notice in the lobby there's no glossy picture of me, and so kudos to Ryan for making the glossy. And you all know it's dangerous to give me a microphone, and but I'm going to try and keep it brief. This is an interesting opportunity we have, and as we come to this point in time, it's difficult to go, so why now? Why at this point of communication, of voting and things do we do? So let me cover some of that for you. I want to go over some of the questions that have come up. We had a week of meetings together with Habitat for Humanity. We also had some questions that came in through the FAQ link option. And I hope that you guys have taken the opportunity to read through a lot of that information. We're not going to review all of the information. My wife informed me that it was hour and a half, and I think she then wanted some summary, so I'm not sure she got through. So I know there's a lot of information out there, so thank you for all of you that have read through all that. So how do we get to this point in time, and why, when you look at what we're doing, why are we at this vote today? So a year ago, actually, well, let's go back further than that. 2016 was the first discussions with Habitat for Humanity about our north property and what the opportunities might be. At that time, executive director and the development director walked the property and prayed about what is the possibility for this. And then a few years later, there was a North Property Committee that also talked about and prayed about what are the opportunities with this. And you might remember that we also had some meetings. We've had, it's just not been just the last week we've talked with Habitat, but Habitat's been here before. We've also had city staff people in talking about the need for affordable housing in Longmont. So we talked about that. In these previous discussions, the discussion hasn't been about a cash offer for the property. There was some thought about, well, do we just donate it to them? There was also a thought about, well, we would go ahead and in effect become the financiers for the lots, and as homes were sold to the homeowners, then we would get a small portion of the price, and it would be lot by lot. Having been a former bank regulator, I wasn't consulted about all this, but I surely heard that there was lots of issues that might come up with a church stepping into that position, and they're right, that might have been complicated. But in the meantime, God chose to bless Habitat for Humanity of the St. Vrain Valley with a large cash donation to where they actually have now been able to give us a cash offer. So a year ago, I think it's about a year ago, I can't remember exactly the date, but about a year ago, well, yeah, it was actually before Garrett got here, we had a cash offer. We asked Habitat to wait because we felt that it was important, and Garrett felt it was important for us to pause and make sure that we knew how that sale of that property fit with the entire ministry goals of our church. That's a good idea. So, we've all been grading Garrett, right, as long as he's got along here. And he's really lucky that his family gets him, way up on the, in a pretty high ranking just all by himself. But when Garrett said that, and this is before I was on the elder board, it was like, that's really good thinking. And so this past summer, Garrett put together a team. It included staff people and elders and other members of the church to look at not just the north property, but look at everything. And those of you that have been around here a while, and those of you that work in different sections of this building know that it was probably a good idea to stop and look at this building as well. We didn't leave any stone unturned. We considered all options. I think a favorite option when people are just kind of throwing stuff out is, well, let's just tear this down and build something new over there. We talked about expanding over there and found out that, we can't be a mega church on this piece of property with city zoning. But we did consider everything, and I think that was good. I think that you have to look at the whole picture. And so we hired a consultant that helped us with that discussion and to be much more informed. That when we're talking about what would be possible, we're actually dealing with actual floor plans of the building. We're dealing with educated cost estimates. We don't have anything firm on things, but educated cost estimates. We also talked with real estate brokers. We talked with the Longmont Economic Council. We talked with appraisers as we were doing this thing. So what are we doing? What's this worth now? And it was interesting. I was relating to somebody this morning, and it's kind of hard to convey. It's kind of hard to convey that whole experience without you guys all falling asleep on me anyway. But there were many times, I can easily, I don't know, you guys probably don't have this problem, but I'm going to go ahead and confess that sometimes I like to control things more than I let God control. So I know. I'll try and, we can talk later about it if you've never dealt with that. I deal with it a lot, and it's really hard when you're looking at things and you're going, how are we going to do all this? And trust me, when you sit in meetings where you're going over lots of details, you have lots of opportunities to go, how are we going to do all this? How are we going to fix all this? How are we going to afford all this? And it was interesting. God was very gracious to me in showing things, but also in us, both Habitat and us, to show it really just kind of unfolded. I remember I talked about that at the summit, and Garrett goes, yeah, that unfolding. And it really felt like that. We just kept having these turns. Somebody asked one time, well, is everybody in favor of the recommendation? Like as if we had taken a vote. And it's like, and it was kind of like, I remember talking with people, it's like, well, we didn't really take a vote because it wasn't like, it wasn't really like there's like, well, A or B. It was, here's what's unfolded. Here's what's available. Here's what the option. But it was really good to look at everything. I remember we met with the Longmont Economic Council, and B's daughter has some association with them, and we were there. And one of the things we considered as well, if that half of the property is good for housing, maybe this half is too. So do people have an interest in developing the whole thing? And Longmont Economic Council has a subgroup that's looking at affordable housing from an employer wanting to be able to have workers be able to live in this town. But it was interesting how that meeting went. I think it went totally unlike what we thought it was going to. And one of the things that was interesting, a couple of the board members for Longmont Economic Council are real estate developers. And it was interesting, the support. They're both Christians that were there. And just the affirmation of, because we were kind of talking about, and Dave Emerson was there. And they were kind of looking at us like, well, yeah, you have a good plan with Habitat. It was kind of like, I think they were kind of going, I don't know what advice you guys need. But it was very encouraging to see God affirming these things. As we talked with different people, it wasn't just, oh, we've done this, or that the consultants from outside, they're from the Midwest, right? They're not from Ohio, are they? Oh, yeah, good. Okay, sorry, Dave, sorry. But it was good to see this affirmed. During one of the meetings we had this past week about the project, I'd made the comment that we've done nothing with the property next door. And I don't know if this person is here, if they want to admit to what they said to me. But they informed me that I was wrong. It's happened before, that people have said I was wrong. But it was interesting because then the next Sunday we were talking and she because part of it you look at it and I think about, remember all those years when we had tons of excess money? We'd like, oh, okay, what are we going to do with all of our abundance? And I was kind of going, oh yeah, we should have been doing this, we should have done that. And this person said to me, she goes, but isn't it good that we have this property now when we really need it? And I hadn't really, I've been talking about this a lot, I hadn't really thought about that. But isn't that true? Isn't it good that we have this property now because we have a big need? Where we're sitting has a lot of work that needs to be done. It has a lot of things that are not as functional as they should be and doesn't really support the ministry the way we would like to do it for this community and for all of us as believers as well. So God's given us this opportunity. Why has this property been sitting there all this time? Why did the people that moved us to this location, why did that body of believers buy the whole thing? Now, of course, it was farmland back then and it was probably a little bit cheaper than it is now. So praise God, right? Praise God that they had that foresight to do that. Some of the questions that came up during this past week's meeting, we're talking about what is Habitat planning to do? Now, we're talking about selling the property to Habitat. And I think that that's something to keep in mind, that we're talking about selling the property to Habitat and Habitat developing the property. Now, one of the things that came up was how long it's going to take to get money. So this is when I started. I'm sorry, I finally got around to the first thing I talked about. Like, what's the timing on these things? What are we doing? We waited a year to make sure that this was going to be the right plan to do and that we knew what we were doing, what direction we were going with ministry as well as facilities. So questions come about, how long it's going to take to get money. Questions have also come about, well, why didn't we communicate with the community sooner, the neighborhood? Have we talked with all the neighbors? Have we gotten their input? Well, there's two things at play about timing. One is that when you sell vacant land, there's no utilities over there, there's no sewer, there's no water. There's a lot of things that go into play to get approval to develop that land. So, and it all starts, well, there's one pre-phase, but it all starts after somebody has a signed sales contract. That they have a contract that, yes, we're going to buy this property and we're going to have control of it, but then they go through the city. So there's a lot of process that has to be done, which is why the closing doesn't happen, why we don't get cash immediately. It would be nice, but selling vacant land, lots of development phases, all have to be approved, and there's lots of people interested in approving that. And so that's part of the reason there. And then when you look at, so why didn't we talk to the community earlier? Well, the other thing, if you all remember, there's a reason why you're all here. Because we have a congregational form of organization on how we govern our church. We did some major revisions to the Constitution a while back, and that came up. Do we want to stick with that? Do we want to change that? And it was pretty resounding, yes, we want to do that. We want to stay with the congregation. It is good that we all have to sit in these pews, listen to presentations, and make decisions as a congregation together. Because we need to be united in what we're doing. Now, we might have, I'm not sure we're going to get a unanimous vote on anything we do, but we do need to be united, and your input and being here is important. Well, so that kind of means that we don't go out and sign sales contracts and we don't go out and talk with other people as an elder board or as a pastor or as a subcommittee with a bunch of people until, oh, we've all said as a congregation that yes, you can sell the property. So it's difficult, not ideal. I will tell you, I don't think Connie is here. I did apologize to Connie Solomon. They live right across the street. We haven't been hiding, for all these years, we haven't been hiding about the habitat. But I talked with her about, it's like, yeah, we could have communicated with them more directly sooner. But as I talked with her about what the plan was, I was going, well, and here's why we haven't been out talking with all the neighbors yet, because you all haven't decided that we're going to do that yet. So it's difficult, and I'll readily admit that it is difficult that we can't have everything decided and approved and done before we vote. It's also difficult that after we vote, we don't get our money right away. Like, what do I say about that? I don't know. You think about some of the questions you get from your kids. I have a 3-year-old now, and you go, well, because that's just the way it is. That's not a satisfying answer, and I've thought about it a lot with those questions, because I was going, well, and to some degree, that is the way it is. I think it's, so despite the fact that that's very uncomfortable, the other, I think it's good. I'm glad that we have a congregational vote on this. I'm glad you guys are here to be a part of that. And all of you online and people that have asked questions ahead of time too. So the other question that came up is concerns about what Habitat is doing with the property. So one of the things, as I sat through 4 presentations from Habitat and amazingly learned something every single time, have you ever thought about how Habitat for Humanity houses, why they're affordable? I've known Habitat, I was on some Habitat committees when I first moved to town here years ago, and I was going, I'd never really thought about that. So I fear that sometimes we think that Habitat Humanity houses are affordable because we cram a bunch of houses into the area, they build sub-quality houses, they only build duplexes and triplexes, that's how they make it affordable. That's not the case. Number one, they're building single-family houses next door. That's what it's zoned as, and that's what they're doing. They're affordable because you're buying from a builder who doesn't take any profit. So there's no profit, no builder profit. Anybody that's looked at housing stuff, there's always that, there's an actual line item, apart from all the costs, there's that builder profit. The cost items for a Habitat home are significantly less because they get grant money that helps from other sources. They have professionals. There's a large number of professionals that they work with, many of whom donate their services and their time to that project. The other thing that makes the houses affordable is a zero-interest mortgage. So those are really the 2 ways that these houses are affordable. It's a quality home. We've got lots of neighborhoods in Longmont where it has Habitat houses next door to, mixed in with neighborhoods. And so it's a quality home, but it's because of the affordability is because of no profit, lots of work, sweat equity from the owners, and then volunteers. Our church has helped build a number of Habitat homes in this community already, and hopefully we'll help with some others next door. Density. So that was the other question that came up a lot is, so the preliminary plan, so there's a pre-planning process that Habitat has been doing with the city. When you lay out your plans for a plot of land, undeveloped land, you have to map out everything, and there's zoning laws that affect this property. There's fire department laws about how do they access those houses. One of the zoning laws is that unlike the houses across the street here on Gay, where their driveways all come on, open up onto Gay, you can't do that anymore. So Gay and 23rd are collector roads, meaning that no driveway can directly back into those. So there will be a road through the middle of the north property, or going offside, it'll come up off 23rd and then onto Gay, that will allow for the garages to be on the property, that we won't be creating that kind of a backing onto those houses won't. So most of the homes will have their garages in the back, accessed through a public alley, through kind of the majority of the homes. City zoning would allow up to 40 homes, single-family detached homes, to be built on that lot. the appraisal we got, and we got an appraisal not for Habitat, not for this particular deal, and it was done with the previous committee, was for us to know what is the land worth. Well, that appraisal, they did the highest and best use. So this is what would be expected in the community, and this was 32 houses is what they had done, what they had estimated. Now, talking about an appraisal being done a while back, we did affirm, Gabe had worked with that appraiser, we did affirm during our work this summer that that there wouldn't be a significant, they didn't think there'd be any significant difference in the price because it's vacant land. You know, we've seen housing prices going crazy, but vacant land, because it still has to do all the development things, are still involved. Not a significant number. So we confirmed, and so Habitat is offering us the appraised value. I'll be honest with you, on a personal basis, we a lot of times say we're partnering with Habitat. Well, what a great partner we are. We're taking the full appraised value. Now, I think that's a good thing. And I think it's a blessing from God that, quite honestly, Habitat is able to do that up front with us. You know, that we're not having to finance something through all the construction. I'm taking way more time than I intended to. Thank you, Jack. I just got an affirmation from my fellow elder that I should shut up. So I have a lot of things on my heart more that I would like to share with you. The thing we have to remember in this deal is that this isn't the only thing we're about. We're not about that property. We're not about this building. We're about Jesus Christ. And that's what we can't lose focus on that. That's been my fear. We're going to be so focused in on that property, we're going to be so focused in on renovating this, that we're going to lose sight of why we're really here. So while we need to pray about all these parts, let's never lose sight about why we are a body of believers. It's so that more people will know Jesus Christ as their personal Savior.
Thank you, David, for sharing all that. And that was the beginning of our discussion time, but I want to hear if there's other questions or comments to add to our discussion before we prepare to vote. We have had, several meetings where a lot of questions have been asked and answered, but I see some hands up, and we have the 2 mics that we can use, so we can hopefully hear the questions. And I'm not probably in a position to answer all questions, so I'll rely on some others to answer.
I'm still not clear on how many houses could potentially be built there. I heard 40 and I heard 32, so can you clarify?
So I can clarify that one. I at least know these facts. So the city zoning allows 40 single-family homes to be built on that acreage. The appraisal was done with an estimate of 32 homes. The current drawings from Habitat that they've been working with to kind of develop a potential layout, it has 30 plots, is my understanding. So it's a small step down from that density that the appraisal is set based on. But they're not asking for any accommodation in the price based on that. What we are doing is what's before you is an offer from Habitat to buy it and then take it through the development process. So some of those details could change before the project occurs. The realities of getting city approval for various parts of the plan might require changes in their plot layout that decrease the number of units further. So it's not locked in stone at this point. We wouldn't be making those decisions as a church because we would be selling that property to Habitat to serve as the developer. It would be their project to work to get approval, notification of the neighbors, along with us participating in that communication. But it would be up to them and their processes, working with the city to set some of those details. I know there was at least one hand over here.
So with the fact that we wouldn't be getting money for a year, 2 years, whatever went through that process, what will the contract say are the contingencies that would maybe cause this to fall apart? Or are we compensated in any way if it does fall apart? What are the things that we should be concerned about as we go through this 2 years of just waiting for that contract or the sales to finally close? What is in the middle of that?
Okay, that's a good question. So the question, everybody heard the question because it was on the mic, right? Do I need to restate the question? Okay, I'll try to do my best, and then others chime in if you have better information or more information to add. So I don't have the contract memorized, but there's a number of conditions where, let me see, how to say this best. Okay, so they have to, before we can close, they have to receive entitlements through the process with the city. So although they've been given indication of great support from the city for this type of project and this specific project, as you know, they've exchanged details about their planned proposal. They really do have to go through the 5, 6, 7 step process, whatever that, how many steps there are, including notifications, including various agencies in the city government giving their approval that specifics that they would be proposing have met the requirements and are satisfactory. What else could? So if that process fell apart for some unanticipated reason, then that would be one way in which the deal might not close. They are proposing to put down some earnest money, even though they've already spent, I forget it was $8,000 or $10,000 on developing the initial plan so far, and in order to get through the various, clearing the contingency or the acquiring the entitlements, or what, I'm not sure the exact phrase there.
The next process is the entitlement, and so
they would be spending much, much more money than that $10,000 in order to complete that process, and so, they would be heavily invested in. It would be unlikely that it would be a good decision for them to back out. So, my mind thinks of all kinds of worst case scenarios. What if one of their employees steals all their money? Or what if, Habitat for Humanity ceases to exist because of some lawsuit? Those kinds of things could theoretically cause the contract not to close.
So there's a 2-year time limit on this sales contract. We also, part of it is that the Calvary would not refuse a reasonable extension. You know how you always get to here's the deadline, and then usually next week they'll actually approve it. So we've also agreed in principle with them that we would accommodate that so that it could get done. But I think Tracy, as each of these steps they go through, there are several steps that the city could say no, and then we'd be free of the contract. But it is a 2-year contract contingency on them getting approval from the city. We already have, I was telling somebody, Longmont Economic Council, the woman who's the head of that used to be on planning and zoning for the city, and she's already pledged her support to help get this through and recommendations to the city. So there's good support for an affordable housing project in Longmont, but it is a process nonetheless.
And I will say the terms of the contract haven't been fully finalized. We've had a lawyer take a look at it, give us some input, and we plan, if the church were to give us the right to execute the contract as a church, then we would work out those contract terms to finality and then execute the contract.
Thank you very much. As part of a couple of meetings in the previous weeks, there was a discussion about maybe a communication plan, and then for the, I think, second to last meeting, Habitat actually came up with what it could potentially look like. So is the plan to put that in the contract as well?
That won't be part of the contract because they have to do all that. But I can't believe that I didn't say 30 houses. I'm like going, wow, I went down that and didn't say 30 houses. This is what the plan is. The other thing, and thank you for bringing it up, was the other thing was communication with the neighbors. So built in to the process with the city is, it's called entitlement, and one of that is meetings with the neighborhood. What Habitat's plan is, and we're going to participate in this plan, is that the first communication is going to be door knocks. That Dave Emerson and probably Garrett or some other people from the church will be there and talking with the people and listening to their concerns and listening to what's on their minds and their hearts about the project. Following that would be a neighborhood meeting, which we would most likely host here, to discuss those things. But I appreciated the fact that Dave's first thing was, well, we're going to go talk to you one-on-one and find out what people's issues and concerns are. When I had my discussion with Connie Solomon, David talked about that, and having that discussion with Connie, I was hearing what her thoughts were as a neighbor. So that's the initial phase. So we will finalize a contract, but the first communication, we won't be doing any press releases. Now it's filed with the city, and so it's not like it's going to be a super secret thing. But the first people that we're going to talk to about it is the neighborhood. That communication process formally belongs to Habitat because it is their requirement on doing the land development, but we will be a part of that in hearing the neighbors. But just want to be clear, it's not our process, so we don't get to control everything on that. But Dave Emerson, from the first time I ever talked with him, has invited us and welcomes us to be a part of that process. So that is where we can have a good partnership.
Yeah, I would say by signing this contract, our interests in the success of that project are aligned. We want them to receive those entitlements to complete the development, and they have to get through that communication in good fashion. Like, they have to be successful in that communication plan. I think we'll be approaching it as partners. Habitat, we've been involved, people within this congregation have been involved for multiple decades, and I think we have the expectation that the trust that we built up over our relationship is just going to be continued through this process. That we're not, even though we wouldn't necessarily put the details of their preliminary communication plan into the contract formally, we are expecting that we will be able to partner well with them to carry out that plan in its final form, hopefully even improve from whatever they quickly threw together between the two meetings a week and a half ago. And we had a question over here.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First of all, what if a majority of the neighbors say, no, we don't want this? And then as far as the size of the homes, are they going to be varied or all the same? Or?
Sure. So as far as the neighbors, I don't think we'll ever, no matter what process we use, we would never know whether the majority of the neighbors supported or were against there won't be a popular vote, there won't be a ballot passed out. We will hear from people that choose to participate in that process, and most likely, based on my experience, I've not been a developer, but observing developments in this area, the people that speak up are the ones that have the most concerns. So even if we were to attend a meeting and people voice lots of concerns, we shouldn't be surprised, because those are the people that are going to want to raise those issues and find out what could be done about them. How can they shape the plans in order to have those concerns addressed? I will say that, as I understand it, as the owners of this property, and then Habitat being the owners of the property, if we sell it to them, they would have a right to develop. So as long as they are going through the city's process and whatever requirements the city were to put on them in response to concerns of the neighbors were, addressed properly, the project could go forward, even if 1 to 500 people were to have some concerns or wish it to be done slightly differently or very differently or not done at all. So I don't know if that's a helpful answer, but that's how I would express
The houses will be varied in size. They're all single-family dwellings. They'll involve some 2-bedroom ranch houses and then 3 and 4-bedroom 2-story houses is what's on their preliminary plan. And what they've realized is that they need to make sure they're somewhat diversified in their housing. Some people think, oh, only a family can do that. Well, they did a dedication 2 weeks ago that was to a single person. The other thing they realized with the smaller homes is that handicapped accessibility is an important feature, and they want to make sure that with the houses they build, that everyone would be able to consider a Habitat home and have it be successful for them.
All right, what other questions? Oh, Gabe has his hand up, so there's something coming from online. The microphone is making its way to Gabe.
We have a question from George Hunyadi, actually 2 online. Fundamentally, there's nothing unusual or different about this process than what it would be if we sold to any other developer or buyer. Is that correct?
I would say, in one view, that is correct, because Habitat would be the owner. They would have full control of the project. They're not going to be coming to us to ask about, moving a line of the plot lines or whatever. You can tell I'm not a real estate developer. But in another way, it will be fundamentally different because they're a Christian organization, shares our values, we're a longtime partner. Their commitment, is to meet affordable housing, affordable home ownership needs in our community, as opposed to a developer whose commitment would be to maximize profit for their investors, or if it's a private company or whatever, themselves. And so I think that is, in one sense, a fundamental difference. And so we don't have offers from other developers at this point. We have an offer that we're considering, and I'm thankful personally that it's an offer from Habitat for Humanity with their particular goals, as opposed to, a for-profit development company. And so, yeah, George, feel free to chime in if that wasn't a helpful answer. But what was the second part?
Second question, I'm just going to rephrase it slightly, but from a funds and liability perspective, if this sale fell through, wouldn't we just end up to where we are currently now?
I don't know how thoroughly I should answer this, but if we fall through on our duties under the contract, then we have some need to, compensate Habitat for some things. There's lots of ways that if it didn't go through, there'd be different scenarios that we'd have to go down. But we don't plan on doing that. That's not our intention from our side. So if it falls through because the city doesn't grant approval, or these worst case scenarios I laid out for Habitat come to fruition for some reason, then yes, we would have their earnest money, I guess, but we would have still ownership over the property. If they've gone through the process of seeking entitlements for development, there might be some things that the city has approved that would then either that might be binding on some future developer that would want to develop that property, or would need to go through some process to have it changed if a developer wanted to do something different than what Habitat had started working towards. That's the only material change I can think of if the deal were to fall through. I've got a question over on this side, David. And Lee, were you just pointing, or were you raising your hand too? Okay.
My name is John Chrisfield, excuse me, and I'd like to speak in favor of us selling this property. And it is a relatively small step in what we need to do as a church. As I look around this room right now, and I consider where we will be in 10 or 15 years, one way or another, there are going to be a lot fewer people who are here present today who will not be present in 10 or 15 years. There are a lot of younger people that we do need to be coming into this church. So I think this is one step along the way of really seeking to ask God to lead us in drawing more and more people to his church to become part of his body. And so, again, I would speak in favor of doing this and moving on.
All right, thank you, John. Yeah.
So what year was the appraisal done?
David.
Gabe, is it 2021? 2021.
2021 was the year the appraisal was done.
And it was affirmed that the value would still be valid this summer.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Other questions over here? Oh. Okay.
So I think it's a good idea to develop that property. My one concern is the density, the number of homes that are being built there. By the time you take out the space for the road and the retention pond and the easement, you're probably looking at about 8 homes per acre with the 29 lots that were shown on the map last time. And I just think that's a lot. And one of the things that Habitat mentioned is if we agreed to have slightly less homes, that they would consider a lower price because they wouldn't be. Is that something that could be approached more seriously?
I would say that the recommendation to the church from the elders is to not do that, to move forward. Our recommendation has been to move forward with the offer that Habitat is making based on their current proposed plan, and the valuation that was approximately consistent with that, 32 homes versus you're saying 29. I didn't count them up. I was just hearing 30 being bandied about before. If this recommendation isn't received favorably by the congregation, I think that's a reasonable thing to consider if we find out that that's the reason that those that voted against it voted against it. So that's an eventuality we haven't reached yet, because we do see a value in executing the project as Habitat has envisioned it, where it would provide affordable home ownership for as many homeowners as can be reasonably accommodated on that property. I think, as we discussed it among the elders, that is a goal that we would have as well. And so we wouldn't recommend trying to limit the development to a lower density, some arbitrary density that we would select. Our recommendation is that we allow them to develop it consistent with their mission and their experience of what is going to meaningfully provide affordable home ownership. And I think I saw Damon's finger up as well. So we'll go over here first and then.
Just to answer a question about the density, just to comment, for those of us that live in this area, right around the corner, over across from the dog park, over on the west side of Francis, is the subdivision that's just east of Garden Acres Park. And the lots in that subdivision are about 4,000 square feet per lot. So if we're trying to mentally think about what would the number of homes look like, how large the lots would be, that's just to give you sort of a mental image. An acre is 43,560 square feet. And so on that subdivision, there's about 11 lots in an acre, subtract the streets off of there. So just the density would probably be similar for those of us just trying to mentally get an idea of what that might look like.
And that 4,000 that Danielle mentioned is the average of the lots on the preliminary plan, and we're stressing preliminary because it's not an approved plan, are between about 3,600 and 5,000 square feet.
do we know, has Habitat actually received this grant funding, or is it just a promise on theirs?
Yeah, I heard Dave answer, but I'll try to say it into the microphone. They have received the funding. So, and we've made them sit on a portion of it for a year, and I think that's a sign of their interest in following through on this project, that they haven't used it for other projects.
There is additional grant money that as soon as they have a signed sales contract that they can get that will help with the development process. And so it's interesting, I hadn't thought about it, about what all the funding sources are for this, but there is additional grant funding that they are aware of and would be likely to get, but it's waiting on a sales contract signing.
What other comments or questions do you have? We've got one back here.
Thank you. I am curious if the affordable housing handle on this neighborhood after it's completed has a fuse on it, or does it last forever? Are there deed restrictions on future purchases within the neighborhood that could change the looks of it and maybe give us an eventual black eye for being a part of something that goes sour?
So what are you thinking, what would go sour? The fact that it stayed affordable?
Oh, yeah, so
Okay,
I understood
they
part of the question. I want to make sure we get you their full answer. So let me start with an answer and then see if it didn't or did address what you're asking about. So I asked a similar question to your first part of your question about, okay, are these permanently affordable at one of the informational meetings, I wanted to hear Habitat try to describe it to me. It sounds like it's, there's some instrument in the legal documents, and I didn't press them to try to get them to explain it to me because I probably wouldn't understand it, but there's some type of, I think you used the term deed restriction. I think that's the mechanism that accomplishes this, but they would be permanently affordable, available only to home buyers that are within a certain 30 to 60% median income for the area. But that I asked, could the homeowners that are purchasing these, can they participate in some degree in the change in value? And it sounds like yes, but it's not like they get a windfall, like instantly they have the equity of the market value. It's the deed restriction limits their potential gain and ensures that if they do decide to move or need to move for whatever reason, and they sell the property, that someone else that is deemed to qualify for affordable homeownership opportunities like this would be who could move in there. So that, that complicates their sale somewhat. They can't just offer it to the whole market, but it ensures that the step we're taking now is not a one homeowner generation impact. It carries forward. Yeah, and was there another part of that about? I know you were asking about a black eye. Were you concerned that if it was not permanent, that's we would just have any old person that didn't maybe have a need for that home living there, and okay. I'm getting some nods, so that was potential, a potential concern. Okay. All right.
So I just have two small questions.
Sure.
There's a piece of our property that is on that other portion. Have you decided how that's going to go down?
The offer that we've received is to sell the portion that's beyond that berm, so to follow the new natural boundary. I don't know how you want to describe it, and not to follow the original plot line. There's been some discussion about potentially in the future maybe if it's mutually beneficial to us, like if they can, improve their plot layout, and we decide, wow, that road really, needs to be changed, and we need to do something different, and we decide that's a priority for us versus other things, they're open to exploring that, but they're not requiring us to change or to go to the original plot line. It will require one of the entitlement steps is they have to get the city to approve that new boundary between the two plots.
So it'll kind of conform around the road, the
That's
property
that's
line.
that's the current offer, the current
new
plan. It would
survey.
require both of us agreeing to make a change
Okay.
to change that.
Okay. And then will there be an HOA that will maintain the integrity of those homes for perpetuity?
Yeah, so will there be an HOA? When we had the informational meetings with Habitat, Dave Emerson did say it would need an HOA. And so he even gave the illustration when they offer education to the homeowners that are going to be purchasing, they educate them on HOAs and what it means to live in an HOA managed community. And I assume they would cover I forget the term, but the requirements that the HOA puts on homeowners. So yes, so there's certain things that you might be concerned about popping up in a neighborhood would be potentially alleviated through the existence and the operation of the HOA. Yes.
So I didn't hear all that last question, but were those trees on the other side of the road, is that part of the property? So how far past the trees?
So there was a question about the trees that are beyond the road.
So the question is about the trees along the berm. So the property line that's being proposed in the sales contract would be just beyond those trees. So it's a curve. Yeah, not a straight line anymore. It'll be a curve. So everything that we're currently using with landscaping and road will retain that. We're selling everything that's just beyond that. There might be.
I didn't hear that.
There'll be a backyard up against a tree, not a house.
Hey, Dave, that last part of the discussion, I didn't hear half the discussion. So could you, if there was a question or a comment, could you relay that?
So he's just talking about, how close will it be, and a comment that, one of the houses might be back up against the trees, and the way it's laid out right now, it would be a backyard up against those trees, not a house. But yeah, so we're retaining the road, the trees, and just beyond the trees. So everything that we're currently using, all the landscaping and work we did over these past number of years, would be our legal property, and we'd sell everything that's beyond that. So it does. The other thing was, it becomes a curved line. It's not going to be a straight line across.
Yeah, good questions. Any other questions online or here? All right, if there's no further discussion, I saw a hand pop up. If there's no further discussion, then it appears we're ready to vote. So for the online portion, we have, how many people are online? How many connections do we have, Gabe? Okay, you said 27? Okay, so we had, unfortunately, WebEx changed their software, and we can't activate the polling feature that we'd intended to use. So Gabe Chow has sent you online through the chat function instructions about how to submit your vote if you're joining us online. We would ask for the online vote. If you are a member, please vote and indicate if you're there with your spouse or, a group of members, please indicate how many, each vote individually or however you want to do that. And then we need you to submit. So you gave them instructions about the two motions, Gabe? Say that again?
Just let us know which one you're voting for.
Okay, so make sure it's clear in your chat which items you're voting yes or no on. So the two motions before us, and there's ballots being distributed for those of you in the room, are the recommendation from the elders that we affirm Ryan Hodgen as an elder for a term of service of 3 years ending in 2026. And then the second motion before us is a recommendation from the elders that you affirm the sale of the north property to Habitat Humanity for $1.47 million. And on those ballots, you'll notice the first item that you have to mark is whether you're a member or not. We love it if you're here and you haven't yet taken the step of membership. We'd invite you to become a member. But either just hold on to that ballot that you receive or mark no, and that'll be separated as we take the counts. We just need to take the counts of the members that are here today to vote. And go ahead and use one of the pencils or a pen, borrow, share your pens if you need to get those paper ballots marked, and then go ahead and fold them and pass them to the end of your rows once you've completed that. And we've got several men that are going to gather them up and take them into the lobby to count while we continue with our meeting and receive additional reports. Raise your hand if you don't have a ballot and need a ballot. I saw some here in the back. All right, one last call. Is there anyone that didn't receive a ballot that needed one? I don't see any hands. Okay, so gentlemen, once you go in the lobby, I'd request that you count and then double check the count, and then check in with Gabe and the technology team there to get their tally from the online votes, and then you can be ready for us to report those. All right, I think the movement in the room is subsiding a little bit. If you've got a ballot that needs to be collected, raise your hand with that ballot so we can find you and get it collected. All right. Well, thank you everyone for, I really enjoyed that discussion time, and you had really good questions. And thank you to Dave and the communication team. I know B and others participated in planning how to make sure we were properly informed about what we were deciding, how we arrived at this point. And I feel like we're making an informed decision, whatever the decision is that we make. Okay, next up is our financial report. And so Tracy Carson is going to share that with us, update through the prior month.
So now we come to the exciting part of the meeting. All right. I think that there are some slides that we're just going to talk about. I'm hopeful. Okay. So this is the information that we have for everything through August. As you'll note, easy calculation, our budget is $100,000 each month. That's what we like to see in giving, and we have a balanced budget, so that's what our expenses should be equaling at least by the end of the year. So year to date through August, our giving is down about 10% of what year to date budget is. So that's certainly a concern. I don't know that it's necessarily off from previous years, but something that we're certainly watching. Our year-to-date expenses are still within budget, but more than our giving. So again, that's something that we're watching. Go to the next slide if you would. Yeah, so in August, one of the reasons that you see that the giving that the expenses were that much higher, because we kind of do tend to track with our giving each month. But giving in August was only $88,000, whereas expenses were up $156,000. A significant portion of that extra expense is our global partners. We pay them on a quarterly basis, and that third quarter checks went out for that, and that's a significant portion of that. Yeah, and you'll see that up there, as well as some HVAC maintenance, which we all know is a kind of a continuing issue that we have here. So those were some of the big expenses. Next slide, please, if there is one. Okay, this is really probably hard to read, but it's a graph that indicates our giving over the past 4 years by month. And 2023 is the yellow line that's at the beginning, and you see in general it pretty well tracks with where we've been. If we were to dig into the numbers each month, obviously there are differences, but that's kind of the trend, and that's what we on the financial ministries team and the elders are watching, especially as we go into the last quarter of the year, anticipating that we'll see things at least being equal to what they've been in the past years. Okay, next slide. Okay, some of the beyond our giving, just to the general fund, we do have funds that you can give to that are restricted funds, and we keep a separate balance for those for specific things. And 3 of those funds are listed here. One is the building fund. That's the balance in the account. It'd be nice if that was what was given this last month, but that's just the balance in the account. There is money that goes into that each month. There are generous givers who contribute to that, but that's important, obviously, as we move forward with maybe some improvements to this building, and just our general maintenance. Sometimes that's where that has to come out of. In the church planting fund, again, that's the balance that we've had that account for quite some time, but there are, again, some generous givers that continue to contribute to that on a regular basis. And as our vision has kind of shifted now to being a church planting church, we'll be probably drawing on that fund or hoping that fund will increase so we can move forward with that. And then Rob talked about the Deacons Fund, and that's the current balance that we have there and the funds that they have available to use for all of those requests that they get on a regular basis. Okay, I think, is there another slide? That's it. Okay, one other thing that Garrett wanted me to mention was just in regard to True Path, and that's the company that had that did the survey, the questionnaire, this analysis of our building. We owed them a total of $40,000, and we've paid them $28,000. So we have a little bit of a balance left to pay, which I'm assuming will probably come up here in the next month or so. So I'll open it up to any questions. Yes, Keith?
Wouldn't it make sense for that air conditioning to come out of the building fund? That changes the air conditioning? Wouldn't it make sense for the money that used on HVAC to come out of the building fund?
Yeah, in general, what we try to do is anything that is in the budget, because we have a budget for property maintenance, and as long as we have funds available in that budget, we will try to pull it out of there. If it becomes something that we would need to pull from the building fund because we don't have those monies in there, that's actually amounts that need to be approved by the congregation in order to pull that out. So yes, it could be something that we do, but it's going to have to come back to a quarterly meeting in order to get that approval, in order for us to pay it out of there. And Scott? Yep, I think Garrett's got a few copies of them up here. The financial dashboard report that we've had in the past, so there are some available.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to pass them out right now, but I have a stack of them as well, so please just come and find Garrett or I after the meeting if you'd like to take home one of those financial statements.
Any other questions or
So why are
comments?
the last 2 meetings cash balances have been omitted from the public discussion and the public slides? That's a question.
Okay.
They just have been. We've just been highlighting the expenses.
Yeah, I guess my understanding is that we received some feedback that trying to splash this detail on the slides was challenging to see for online or here, and I think the effort was to try to streamline the information shown so that it, is easy to understand. But I don't, but why that particular number is not there. Yeah. Okay, so the total cash is at the end of August on this statement that you can receive a copy of after the meeting if you'd like, is $566,374.47. Is that helpful? Yeah.
Okay.
Duly noted.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
Okay. Someone was wanting to make a motion to approve the minutes. We can do that because I guess we've always, approve the financial report. I guess we've traditionally done that here, but I was trying to educate myself to be a moderator for a meeting like this. Never done this before. Apparently, that's not advisable for an organization to do that, and we don't need to do that. Financial reports, just like the other reports, since they haven't been audited and we have no basis for determining that they're correct, are better just to receive. And so that's my recommendation as the moderator.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you so much, Tracy. All right. Yeah, thank you, Tracy, for sharing that information. And this is the financial report I'd be happy to give you afterward. And we want to be transparent. So if you have questions that weren't addressed in our discussion time there, come up as you look at this, just ask, and we'd like to share that with you. And if it's something we think all of you would want to know about, we can communicate that at the next congregational meeting as well. All right, are we still tallying up the votes? I don't see a contingent of people coming this way. So, okay, so the next thing and the last thing on the agenda is an update from the Council of Elders. And so hopefully what I'm going to share is of interest to you. And I know we've had a long afternoon, so I just want to express my appreciation to you for coming out and participating. I've been a part of churches and attended these kind of meetings even as a kid my whole life, and there's something inspiring, I guess, to me in my faith about seeing the body of Christ operate together, choosing to operate in unity even if we have different perspectives and different thoughts. And so I've enjoyed doing this together with you today. And I just want to welcome, sorry, I've got three things I'm going to tell you about. The first is that we've been discussing as elders our shared commitment to pour into future leaders for the church. Someone alluded to, our future 15 years from now, maybe having a different membership, and so it's important for our church that we have a deep bench of men and women that can step in to the roles, and that's going to require that they understand their abilities and gifts, and hopefully they've had somebody confirm that to them, that has recognized and called out that gifting, that they've been offered a connection with current or former leaders that can answer questions, help dispel any mystery about what it means to serve in roles like, Rob and Roe, or leading Deacons Fund, or serving as an elder, or serving as a deacon on the Global Partners team. What are these roles like? We want you to be offered a connection to find out what that's like. We want these leaders to become familiar with our church governance, so have opportunities to learn about what our bylaws requires and what our how we operate. and then leaders, potential leaders that have been invited and encouraged to participate in meaningful ways that give them exposure to those leadership functions. The Deacons Fund, Global Partners, Financial Ministries, elders, others. So we feel it's an important part of our future for our own church, but all the more important as we explore planting new churches. And we're still kind of discussing how best to accomplish this, but rather than some formal process, we're envisioning at this point a very relational process. And if something I've just said about this pouring into future leaders sparks an idea or a thought or a question, we'd love to talk with you about it. So whether that's someone that you want to put on our radar as someone to pour into, or that's you that has curiosity about how do we operate as a church, what are the leadership roles, and how to connect with a leader, that I'd love to talk about with you. The second thing I want to share is just my own excitement at seeing the refreshed approach to group ministry. I've loved that long-standing, faithful groups are continuing to meet, but that there's new groups that are forming, and new invitations to people to have these new places to connect. And if you've been on the fence about whether to jump in and join one of these groups that are forming, or you have been on the fence about whether to step out in faith and start a group, I just encourage you to take advantage of the support that Pastor Jamie and Garrett and we at the church would give you, and let's continue the momentum in this area. I know my wife and I have just found so much life in being part of groups like the small groups that we have here, through all kinds of life experiences, from celebrating together to comforting one another, and just being challenged and encouraged in our faith. And I want you all to be a part of that, but let's continue offering that to those that call Longmont Calvary home. And then the last thing I wanted to do was just to invite you, if I can find my last page, is to invite you into the prayer focus we've been having recently as elders. At least I've been trying to encourage us to pray this way. Paul gave some instructions in his letter to the Colossians. He said, "Devote yourselves to prayer, being watchful and thankful. And pray for us too, that God may open a door for our message, so that we may proclaim the mystery of Christ, for which I am in chains. Pray that I may proclaim it clearly as I should." So a few of the words in that stood out to me as I looked at that right at the start of our new church year. It says, devote yourselves to prayer, being watchful. So watchful, the literal word there means to be awake and alert. So we need to pray like a night watchman. We should be prepared and expectant that we're going to see potential threats for the church. Certainly pray about those, but also potential opportunities. We need to be on the lookout for those and expect to see those and to bring them to God in our prayers. And then it says, and thankful. So our prayers are going to be offered in the context of God's providence, recognizing and being grateful for his work and his blessing. And then Paul asked for the Colossians to pray that God would open a door for the proclamation of Christ. And so God is in the business of providing opportunities to proclaim Christ. So we should ask him to do that for us, and we should expect him to do it, both individually and as a body together. And then Paul, of all people, taught by Jesus himself, author of so many of the letters that we build our theology from and encourage one another with, and know how to follow Christ well because we read. He, master communicator, went across the known world and shared his faith to people in leadership, lowly people. He asked that the Colossians would pray that he would proclaim Christ clearly. So I feel a need when I read that I want to be praying that in our culture, in our time, in our place, in our neighborhoods, in my workplace, that when I have the opportunity to speak in favor of Christ and share that message, that it would be clearly offered. And so if we need to do things in new ways as a church, pray that God would help us understand how to do that best. How do we communicate it to our culture? How do we offer Christ in an effective way, clearly? So as we're praying for that, I'd love for you to be praying for that, for yourself, for us, for our church. All right, I see somebody came in with some paper with the vote tallies. All right, so there were 106 votes that were cast, and so that's well more than our quorum requirement of 41. For the affirmation of Ryan, 96% of the votes were in favor of that. So welcome, Ryan, and he's already been gracious enough to join our elder meetings the last couple months, so he just is up to speed with the ongoing state of conversations about various issues. So thank you for affirming that. And then on the vote about the sale of the property, 91% approved of that motion as well. I guess sometimes at the end of the elder report, they ask for questions. Are there any questions?
Thank you for the report, Paul. You talked about the small groups and a lot of newer small groups starting. What are your thoughts on kind of equipping some of the new leaders? And some of them might have led groups before, but some of them may not have, as an elder and as an elder council.
Yeah, I guess almost all of the elders are small group leaders, so certainly we're people that can be a resource to new small group leaders. But I would say that the primary way in which the new small group leaders are going to be supported is through Jamie Mitchell and his role as Connections Pastor? Community Pastor. I don't have all the titles memorized, unfortunately. And so he's already been, I'm a small group leader, so I get all of his communication, offering encouragement, invitation to, meetings where we pray for one another and kind of share. He shares information to, help us to be equipped. He's shared with us a resource to that would help you in ensuring that you're properly understanding the meaning of a scripture passage and being able to feel ready to teach on that. I'm drawing a blank on what other things help, but Jamie is always probably the focal point of that support, and for me is providing a really good support already. So, other questions? All right, we've reached the end of our agenda. So with that, I would entertain a motion that we adjourn. Okay, Glenn has been ready to make a motion, and so he moves, and David Finnegan seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. All right, it's carried. Thank you again, and let me just close this in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for your work in this place for many, many decades. Thank you for the faithful leaders that have served and brought us to this point. Thank you for the resources you've entrusted to us. Thank you for the opportunity to follow you together rather than just be alone. Thank you that we can function together as a body and that we were able to do that well today. I just ask that you go with us as we separate, help us to be effective in advancing your kingdom. And we pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.